Hey guys, tonight we're stepping somewhere you probably won't enjoy. But don't worry, you won't be staying long. Imagine this. You open your eyes on a lumpy straw mattress, a muslin cloth clumsily covering the tiny window beside you. Your back already hurts. Your throat is dry, and you're not sure if the itching is from the blanket or something else. You're not in Kansas anymore. Actually, you're in a 14th century English village, and by all accounts, your 24-hour clock just started ticking, and not in your favor. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love hearing from you all. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're awake now, and your first thought isn't a good one. It's not, where am I? It's why does it smell like moldy onions and wet sheep? The answer lies all around you. This is a medieval peasant's cottage, and you're very much inside it. The air is thick with the scent of mildew, damp earth, old sweat, and something vaguely sweet but unpleasant. There's a chance someone gave birth in this room last week, possibly even yesterday. The floor beneath your feet is packed dirt, cold and slightly sticky. A chicken squawks outside and you hear something skitter. You think rat. You hope rat. Sunlight filters weakly through a parchment-covered hole in the wall pretending to be a window. Glass is for the church or people who bathe more than once a month. Speaking of bathing, you won't be doing that today, or tomorrow, or this week. More on that soon. You sit up, immediately regretting it as your neck cricks and something crunches in your spine. Don't panic. That's probably just normal or scoliosis. People back then developed it early from malnutrition and repetitive farm work. You don't have long to worry about it, though, because now you've noticed what you're wearing. A linen shift that's been used more times than a tavern mug. It smells like the armpit of a goat that gave up on life. You'll change later, into worse. As you try to rise, your ankle gives a sympathetic throb. Welcome to life without arch support. Shoes are hard leather, flat as pancakes, and stitched by someone whose dominant skill was not comfort design. Most villagers walk everywhere and get corns the size of sparrow eggs. You finally stand. The room tilts slightly. That's not a brain issue. It's the warped floor. Medieval houses were often poorly constructed with green wood, and over time, everything slumped like a wet cake. You'll learn to balance on the lean. Outside, someone shouts, a child, then another sound, metal on metal, a blacksmith at work. You smile. That's kind of charming, until the sound continues, louder and louder, like a repetitive migraine being hammered into existence. Guess who lives right next to the forge? You do. As you step outside, ducking under a doorway built for people who averaged 5 feet tall, you're greeted by a courtyard of uneven cobblestones, a suspicious puddle, and a goose that looks like it wants to fight. It hisses. You back off. Smart move. Medieval geese are feral. By the way, if you were expecting to be welcomed with cheerful villagers and hearty songs, lower your expectations. Everyone is suspicious of you. Why? You look cleanish. You're not related to anyone. You didn't attend mass last week. And you're not immediately useful. That makes you either a witch or a tax collector, possibly both. Your neighbor gives you a once-over while emptying a chamber pot into the street. It splashes on the stones and narrowly misses your foot. You're not lucky. You're simply not cursed yet. Let's talk about what that liquid was. Medieval waste disposal operated on the throw it out the window and let the pigs sort it system. Historians still argue whether this approach was worse in summer, when the stench thickened like gravy, or in winter, when frozen chunks of refuse became slip hazards. You take a tentative step down the narrow lane, dodging more puddles and an inexplicable pile of feathers. Someone had chicken for dinner, or lost a pillow fight with livestock. There's no privacy here. Doors are open, conversations loud, and noses nosier. Everyone is watching. Everyone is judging, especially that old woman spinning thread with a glare so sharp it could whittle wood. And your body? It's already beginning to suffer. Not because of disease, though that's coming, but because nothing here is ergonomic. You'll crouch, lift, haul, bend, and twist all day. Every day. No stretching routine is going to save you from the future medieval chiropractor, a guy named Thomas who offers back cracking and exorcisms for tuppence. But despite the hardship, you spot a glimmer of charm. A toddler runs past, chasing a hoop. A cat naps on a sun-warmed doorstep. The bakery's chimney puffs out a swirl of flower-scented smoke. It's almost peaceful if you forget the cholera and the famine. There's something raw about it all, like life reduced to its scrappiest fundamentals. You're alive, you're breathing, and you haven't been accused of heresy yet. Give it time. You don't realize how lucky you were to have cotton socks and a decent zipper until you try to put on your medieval clothes. Welcome to your first challenge of the day. Getting dressed in garments designed by people who believed buttons were sorcery and laces were an acceptable life partner. Your outfit is laid out for you. Or rather, hanging off a rough wooden peg that's seen better centuries. First comes the tunic, a knee-length piece of itchy wool that smells faintly like damp hay and sadness. It's brown. Everything's brown. Not because people loved earth tones, but because dye costs money, and color is for the nobility. You are not noble. You are aggressively average. You pull it over your head. It scratches your armpits and clings to you in places it shouldn't. Beneath it, you're wearing a linen shirt, which is basically your medieval undershirt / sleepwear / sometimes scarf. It's rarely washed and often worn until it becomes one with your soul. Then come the hose. Not pants. Hose. 2 long woolen tubes that attach to a belt or are tied to your tunic. They cover each leg separately and leave an unfortunate gap in the middle unless you've got a good codpiece. Which you don't. You try to fasten them, fumbling with laces that seem to laugh at your modern dexterity. Your fingers cramp. You feel humbled. You consider surrender. Footwear? If you can call it that. Leather shoes that resemble the love child of a slipper and a medieval pancake. No left, no right, no cushioning, no heel. Just stiff leather and a sense of doom. You slip them on and immediately feel every rock through the sole. You now understand why no one jogged for fun. You reach for your belt, a length of rope. Really, and tie it around your waist. From it, you hang your knife, your coin pouch, empty, and a random token that someone gave you to ward off bad spirits. It looks like a chicken bone. It might actually be a chicken bone. There's no mirror. But if there were, you wouldn't like what you see. Your hair is messy, unwashed, and covered with a linen coif if you're male, or a wimple and veil if you're female. The goal isn't style. The goal is lice prevention. Historians still argue whether these coverings actually worked, but the fact remains, if you're not wearing one, you're either rich, sick, or French. You step outside again, fully dressed now, but feeling less human and more bundled scarecrow. A breeze picks up and sneaks right under your tunic, reminding you that wool isn't windproof. In the distance, someone's shouting about the price of eggs, and your belt is already loosening. You forgot medieval clothing wasn't meant for speed, flexibility, or dignity. It was designed to be sewn once and suffered in forever. Then someone points at you. You turn around, self-conscious. Maybe your hose slipped again. Maybe your tunic's tucked weird. Maybe that token really does attract spirits. It turns out, it's none of those. You're just wearing your cloak inside out. Your cloak. Right. You almost forgot it. It's the final piece of the ensemble. A rectangular wool wrap that fastens at one shoulder with a crude pin. Yours is dyed with crushed walnut shells, giving it a color best described as muddy indifference. You fix it, only mildly poking yourself with the pin. Around you, people bustle in all directions. A man in a fur-lined overcoat struts by, wealthy. A woman draped in layers of green and blue silk, noble. A child, barefoot and clothed in what might be a burlap sack. Somewhere below peasant, you, dear listener, fall right in the middle of this fashion hierarchy, which means you'll go unnoticed most of the time, until you get caught wearing the wrong thing. Sumptuary laws are in full swing. These were medieval dress codes that dictated what social class could wear, what color, fabric, or accessory. And if you step out of line, say, wearing crimson without being at least a knight, you could get fined or worse. It's not even about fabric comfort, it's about fabric meaning. Wearing fur could mean status. Wearing too little could mean disease. Wearing a stranger's tunic could mean you're a grave robber. Clothing was identity, protection, and proof you knew your place. You pass someone wearing a scalloped hood with dagged edges and feel a pang of envy. It's stylish. It's functional. It means they're in a guild. You're not. You have one tunic, one shirt, and a lifetime of drafty mornings. You try to walk confidently, but the hose chafe. Your belt is too tight, and your shoes squeak like damp frogs. You'll adjust, or you won't. That's kind of the whole medieval vibe. Then it rains. Not heavily. Just enough to soak your sleeves and turn the mud road into a medieval slip and slide. Your cloak becomes a soggy curtain, and your shoes immediately fill with brown slush. There's no umbrella, no waterproofing. You shuffle under a thatched overhang with 3 pigs and a girl singing about St. Cuthbert. A drop hits your nose. You sigh, and then it happens. A flea jumps onto your wrist. You slap it. Too late. Your first medieval parasite has officially made contact. Historians still argue whether fleas or lice were the bigger nuisance. You'll get both, eventually, and long for the day you could shower with actual water pressure. And remember, no one here changes their clothes daily or weekly, maybe monthly. You'll sleep in them, work in them. Eventually, you'll die in them, and someone else might inherit your best tunic if the lice haven't already claimed squatters' rights. You sneeze, probably from the dust, possibly from the mold, or maybe it's the start of something more sinister. We'll get to that later. For now, your clothes cling to your body. Your skin itches under the wool, and the day hasn't even really begun. Breakfast in the Middle Ages isn't exactly breakfast as you know it. There are no pancakes, no bacon, no eggs sizzling in butter, no oat milk flat whites in ceramic mugs. There's just bread. And not the fluffy, crusty kind that fills boulangeries with heavenly smells. No. What's waiting for you is a hard, slightly sour, probably 2-day-old chunk of brown bread that could double as a weapon in a tavern fight. You stare at it. It stares back, daring you. This is your breaking fast, and it's surprisingly literal. You might actually break something chewing it. That bread is made from coarse ground rye or barley, baked in communal ovens, and stored in ways that only sometimes involve rats. The edges are chipped, the middle's tough, and there's a faint lingering scent of, was that smoke? Or is that just normal? You dunk it in ale, because that's your drink this morning, not water. Water isn't trusted. It's suspicious. It's where illnesses fester, where animals wade, and where the neighbors do things you don't want to know about. Ale, on the other hand, has been boiled. It's weak, warm, and barely alcoholic, but it's safer than water and more effective than hope. So now you're chewing stale bread and sipping room temperature ale. The morning sun is rising, bringing with it the unmistakable scent of dung and cabbage. A rooster crows in the distance, just a little too late to be useful. You're seated on a 3-legged stool that wobbles every time you shift your weight. Someone next to you, a man missing half his teeth, nods in silent approval. You've been accepted into the rhythm of the day. Let's break this meal down. Most peasants lived on a diet known as the bread and pottage routine. Bread for bulk, pottage for warmth. Pottage is basically whatever you can boil without creating an explosion. Lentils, roots, oats, sometimes an onion if you're lucky, and the occasional meat scrap if you're celebrating something truly rare like not dying. This morning, however, there's no pottage. It's bread, maybe a sliver of cheese that's mostly rind, and ale. If you're in a monastery, congratulations. You might also get watered-down wine and a spoonful of beans, but monks pay for that with hours of silent prayer and very itchy robes. There's no table, just a plank balanced across barrels. Cutlery? That's for rich folks. You eat with your hands or, if you're particularly fancy, with a dull, multi-purpose knife. Yours is slightly bent from the time someone used it to dig weeds. Your fingers smell like the wood smoke from the fire you sat near last night. There's grit under your nails, and you're constantly swatting away flies. One lands in your ale, you drink it anyway. That's how this world works. But here's the real kicker. Most people didn't eat 3 meals a day. They had 2, one in the late morning, one in the early evening. Breakfast was reserved for children, the elderly, and the sick. If you're eating right now, you're either lucky or considered unproductive enough to need early energy. You overhear a conversation. A man is arguing about the size of his loaf, claiming the baker shorted him. A woman counters that he's just fat and needs to get over it. Meanwhile, someone walks by selling eels in a bucket. They're still wriggling. You pass. You reach for another bite of bread and chip your tooth slightly. You consider crying. Instead, you chew through it like a champion. You're adapting. But don't get comfortable. That bread? It's probably adulterated with chalk or sand to make loaves heavier. Unscrupulous bakers would mix in ground-up bone, plaster dust, or anything else that wasn't immediately lethal. It's one of the reasons peasants had terrible teeth, assuming they had any teeth at all. Historians still argue whether medieval bread was always this grim, or if we're just reading the worst accounts. But judging by the way your jaw already aches, it's safe to say the truth wasn't much better. And yet, somehow, this breakfast is a social event. People gather, exchange gossip, complain about the bailiff, and discuss who might be harboring a cat that looks suspiciously like a witch's familiar. You chew, you nod, you listen. You're becoming part of the village hum. A dog barks somewhere behind you. A baby cries. Someone drops a spoon made of horn and swears creatively using words you don't understand. And then someone mentions taxes. Yes, even in this sleepy, rustic world, taxes are very real, and breakfast chatter often includes grim updates about what the reeve wants this month. Grain, eggs, wool, maybe even part of your upcoming harvest. One man grumbles that he paid with his only pig. The woman beside him mutters that it's still better than the old lord, who once demanded geese in return for not setting the grain on fire. The bread sits heavy in your belly. The ale warms your throat. But the day isn't done congratulating you. You're just at the starting line. Someone yells your name, or what they think your name is. It's time for chores. You rise, brushing crumbs off your tunic. The stool almost topples. Your knees crack. You sigh. You're full, technically. Nourished. Not quite, but you've survived medieval breakfast without vomiting, fainting, or accidentally insulting a nearby noble by chewing too loud. That's a win. So far, you've eaten food designed to last weeks, not please your palate. You've drunk weak beer before noon, and you've participated in the glorious medieval ritual of pretending everything's fine while knowing full well that dinner will probably be more of the same. Still, you can't help but wonder what's for lunch. Spoiler, it's not better. You shuffle toward the village square, your shoes squelching slightly from the morning's dampness, and you immediately regret leaving the relative safety of the cottage. Because now, dear listener, you've entered the real medieval world. Loud, chaotic, and more than a little unhygienic. The town is alive, but not in the charming postcard kind of way. More in the, wow, is that a goat chewing parchment kind of way. You try to sidestep the goat. You fail. It stares at you with the confidence of an animal that knows no laws. The road underfoot is mud, laced with straw, chicken feathers, and a generous helping of things that once lived inside human intestines. Open sewers line the center of the street. Basically narrow trenches where everything gets dumped. Waste, dishwater. Yesterday's regrets. It's all there. People throw slop from their upper story windows without warning. In fact, yelling "Gardez-vous," which means "watch out" in garbled French, is considered a courtesy. You hear it now, seconds before something suspiciously lumpy splashes near your feet. You're breathing through your mouth now. Good instinct. The village square is bustling. Merchants shout over each other, trying to sell goods you're not sure are edible, wearable, or possibly cursed. There's a man selling eels again. Why is it always eels? A woman offers you a dried apple. It looks like a shrunken head. You decline. Let's pause for a historical fact. Most medieval towns were not designed for population density. Houses were packed together with no standardized layout. Streets were narrow, alleys narrower, and everything was built from wood. Flammable, splintery wood. Fires were common, extremely common. One careless hearth spark and half the village could disappear. People still argue whether some towns burned down more than they were built up. You wander past a tanner's stall. Instantly, your eyes water. The smell is indescribable. A cocktail of rotting flesh, dog urine, used to soften hides, and crushed brains, used as tanning agents. It punches you in the face. You stagger sideways, nearly into a goose again. The goose hisses. Again. Next to the tanner is a blacksmith, hammering at glowing iron, sending sparks into the muddy air. The noise is deafening. Every strike feels like a bell tolling inside your skull. You move quickly, careful not to step into the open forge pit, which is just there. No safety barrier, just open flame and hope. In the center of the square is a post with iron manacles hanging from it. It's not decoration, it's the pillory. Public punishment central. Today it's empty. But yesterday, someone was locked in for stealing bread. Villagers threw cabbage. Some thrown cabbage was fresh. Some was weaponized. You make your way to the well. It's where people gather to fill buckets, gossip, and occasionally slip and sprain something important. The rope is frayed. The bucket creaks. And you swear the water looks slightly cloudy. Someone says it's cleaner than the stream, which is currently being shared by 3 ducks and a man washing his armpits. You spot a boy running with a piglet under his arm. No one stops him. Either it's his piglet or he's fast enough that it doesn't matter. Let's talk wildlife. In a medieval town, animals roam freely. Chickens wander into shops. Pigs serve as garbage disposal units. Dogs are semi-domesticated at best. And cats, suspiciously independent cats, slink through every corner, judging your choices. The concept of leashing is for the future. As you dodge a donkey cart laden with beets, you nearly trip over a cobbler's apprentice. He scowls and mutters something about outsiders in dumb cloaks. You apologize. He snorts. You move on. A musician plays a wheezy tune on a reed flute. It's off-key, but somehow charming. You drop a bent coin into his cup. It clangs. He nods without looking up, still swaying to a melody that sounds like a frog coughing. Nearby, The baker's stall is swarmed. He's yelling about fresh loaves. The bread is warm, steaming slightly. But as you get closer, you realize that only the top is golden. The bottom is blackened. He's scraped the burn off with a knife. It's still more appetizing than breakfast. But the price is steep. 2 pennies. You only have 1. He gives you a look that says, "Come back when you matter." You back away, breadless and humbled. Suddenly, someone screams. You spin. It's a woman yelling about her missing chicken. A crowd gathers. Someone blames a traveling peddler. He denies everything. A heated argument ensues. There is talk of a trial by water. You slip away, stomach still growling. One side of the square hosts a tiny chapel. Bells chime as a friar sweeps the steps, humming something ancient. The doors are open. Inside, it smells of wax, stone, and musty holiness. You hesitate. Religious spaces offer peace, but also judgment. You're not sure if you're clean enough, quiet enough, or obedient enough to enter without bursting into metaphorical flames. Behind the chapel is the graveyard. Simple stone markers, some crooked, some sunken. You glance at one with your birth year. 600 years off. It's a sobering moment. The town crier bellows near the market cross. The Lord requires taxes in kind, grain, wool, or labor. People groan. You do too. You just wanted a snack. As you retreat toward the edge of the square, dodging a wagon that looks moments away from falling apart, you notice something new. A man with a painted cart selling leeches. He claims they cure everything from gout to ghosts. You make eye contact. He winks. You pretend not to see him. By the time you reach the edge of the market, your head aches, your ears ring, and your shoes are now completely soaked. You've been sneezed on twice, stepped in something once, and may or may not be developing a medieval rash. It's unclear, but you're surviving. Barely. You leave the chaos of the market behind and duck into a narrow alley that leads toward the river. It's quieter here, but not cleaner. The smell changes. Less dung, more mildew, and something sour that might be rotting cabbage, or possibly someone's foot wrap drying in the sun. Either way, you're about to get a first-hand look at the medieval approach to personal hygiene. Spoiler, it's not good. You pass a wooden bucket left outside a home. It's filled with cloudy water and floating herbs. Lavender, maybe. A hopeful attempt at washing. Next to it, a rag hangs on a nail, stiff with use. You suspect it's been in service since the last solar eclipse. You spot a woman kneeling beside the river, scrubbing clothes on a rock. The river itself is moving, which is more than can be said for the water in the town's buckets. But it's also downstream from everything. Yes, including the open sewers you just escaped. She hums while wringing out a tunic, then dunks it again. You make a mental note never to wear anything that smells like freshly washed. Let's pause here. The average medieval person bathed far less often than modern standards would tolerate. There's debate among historians. Some argue people bathed once a week in heated water. Others suggest once a season was more likely. Bathhouses did exist, especially in cities. But they had reputations somewhere between spa day and let's meet for syphilis. You think back to your own last shower, your real one, from the 21st century. Steam, clean towels, shampoo with actual scent molecules that didn't come from goat glands. You sigh. You miss it already. Your own bath today involves a basin of lukewarm water, a rag, and a bar of something claiming to be soap. It's gritty. It smells like ash and mint. You scrub your face. The cloth leaves streaks of grime behind. You rinse your hands and dry them on your tunic, like everyone else does. Cleanish. But your teeth? Oh, those poor, neglected sentinels of hygiene. There are no toothbrushes, no minty paste. If you're lucky, you might get a chewed twig or a linen cloth with salt rubbed on it. You find a stick. It splinters immediately. Your gums weep silently. You look around and notice the locals aren't exactly sparkling either. Most people reek of earth, sweat, smoke, and whatever animal they share a bed with. Perfume exists, but it's rare and reserved for the wealthy, or for covering up plagues. Speaking of plagues, remember, this is a pre-germ theory world. People think illness comes from bad air, not bacteria. You might get prescribed dried rose petals in your pillowcase, or be told to walk backward through fog at dawn. A physician, if you can afford one, might suggest bathing in vinegar or wearing a dead weasel around your neck. For the scent, for balance, for science. Obviously, you pass by what looks like a public bathhouse. It's small, wooden, and already crowded. A woman walks out wringing her hair into a bucket. She's smiling. Maybe the water was warm. Maybe it was only slightly reused. But let's be honest. You're not getting a bath today. You're not getting close. You're a visitor. You don't know the rules. And the last thing you want is to accidentally enter the gender-mixed hour and be chased out by someone wielding a ladle. You return to your lane and spot a barber surgeon preparing his tools. It's a folding chair, a wooden bench, and a tray of knives, scissors, and something that looks like pliers. He offers haircuts, tooth pulling, and bloodletting. A one-stop shop for all your bodily needs. You politely decline as he gestures toward your mouth. Further down, a boy pours a bucket of water over his head and screams. It's freezing. He laughs. You almost admire him until you notice the lice comb tucked behind his ear. The battle is never truly won. You sit on a bench, the wood warm from the sun and smooth from centuries of butts. A woman sits beside you, cracking her knuckles and braiding her hair. She says nothing. She smells faintly of garlic and sheep's wool. You nod. She nods. That's as much of a bonding ritual as anyone gets. Let's bring in our fringe fact of the section. Some wealthier households had what they called sweat rooms, the medieval equivalent of a sauna. Not common, not affordable, and definitely not your future today. These rooms were used to sweat out bad humors. Occasionally, people would add herbs to the steam or throw wine on the coals for extra purification. Did it work? Historians still argue whether it helped or just turned poor souls into fancy-smelling raisins. You rise, brushing straw off your sleeves, and take one last look at your surroundings. Hygiene isn't absent here. It's just wildly different. People did what they could, when they could. They knew cleanliness mattered. They just didn't understand why their soap didn't fight bacteria. Mostly because they didn't know bacteria existed. All they had were theories and prayers. Your hands are grimy again. Your feet ache. Your scalp itches. You sigh and accept it. This is your life now. You are unwashed, uncomfortable, and somehow still functioning. You pass a group of children throwing clumps of moss at a wall. One of them hits you square in the shoulder. They giggle and scatter. You consider chasing them, but your hose would betray you. So instead, you wipe off the moss and limp toward your next ordeal, surviving the market without committing an accidental felony. But at least your skin is now slightly damp. You didn't mean to break the law. Really, all you did was ask the baker if he'd accept half a penny instead of a whole one for a crusty corner loaf. A harmless haggle. A good-natured, budget-conscious request. Unfortunately, in this village, under this lord, on this particular Tuesday in the year of our Lord, 1324, that's illegal. The baker glares. The reeve, essentially the local sheriff accountant, overhears. His eyebrows raise so high they nearly leave his forehead. Within seconds, you've got 2 accusations leveled at you, attempting to defraud an honest tradesman and possibly tampering with currency. Congratulations. You may have just become a coin clipper. For context, coin clipping was the medieval version of counterfeiting. People would shave tiny amounts of silver off the edges of coins, melt them down, and pocket the difference. It was a serious offense, punishable by death in many places. And guess what? Outsiders like you asking odd questions about money make people nervous. You try to explain. You smile, apologize, even bow slightly. The reeve squints at you and grunts. You're told you'll be watched. A goose honks nearby, as if in judgment. You walk away quickly, your ears burning. Just another reminder that in the Middle Ages, laws weren't just rules. They were landmines. You didn't read them. You lived them. And if you didn't know one, well, too bad. Ignorance wasn't a defense. It was an extra crime. The market buzzes on around you, oblivious to your near arrest. You pass a vendor selling salt by the pinch. It's expensive. Salt is currency here, a symbol of wealth and taste. Literally. You reach out, then stop. You've learned your lesson. Look, don't touch. A boy yells something about fish taxes. You don't know what that means. You don't want to. Nearby, a man is holding court beside a crude wooden table stacked with documents and seals. He's a local scribe, one of the few literate people in town. He's writing a land agreement for 2 farmers arguing over a strip of pasture. You pause to listen, then quickly back away. The Latin alone could incriminate you. Someone bumps into you. Hard. You spin around, ready to apologize or defend yourself. It's a woman with a basket of leeks and a dagger strapped to her thigh. She sneers and walks on. You feel humbled. Let's take a moment to appreciate the medieval justice system. There were laws, many laws, but enforcement was a patchwork of customs, oaths, local feuds, and divine guessing. Some villages followed common law. Others made it up as they went along. Trial by combat. Sure. Trial by boiling water. Sometimes, trial by jury. If you're lucky and rich, you remember reading something about hue and cry, the rule that if someone saw a crime, everyone nearby was legally obligated to yell about it and help catch the criminal. You glance around nervously. No one's shouting. That's probably good. Probably. But not everyone had equal standing before the law. Nobles could get away with more. Clergy? Even better. If you were a priest and committed a crime, you could be tried in church court, which usually ended in penance, not punishment. This led to the infamous benefit of clergy loophole, where even semi-literate thieves would memorize a Bible verse to fake their way into leniency. Historians still argue whether this saved more innocent lives or just let clever crooks escape. As you move toward a quieter part of the village, you pass the stocks, wooden beams with holes for heads and hands. A man is sitting in them now, flies buzzing around his face. He was caught insulting the Reeves hat. That's it. Just the hat. It was a ridiculous hat, but now he's got 8 hours of public humiliation for his honesty. You try not to laugh. The man glares at you. You nod respectfully. Justice here isn't blind. It's personal, public, and sometimes very petty. You turn a corner and find yourself near the manor house. It's not grand, just slightly taller than the rest of the buildings and less crooked. A bored-looking guard leans on a spear. You smile. He does not smile back. You retreat. Landlords, lords, and liegemen. The feudal web is thick and tangled. Your position as a commoner, an unsworn nobody, is precarious. You owe labor, taxes, and obedience. In return, you get protection, which often looks a lot like quiet indifference. And don't even think about picking flowers from the Lord's garden or catching fish from his stream. Poaching? That's a capital offense. Even collecting fallen wood might get you fined if the forest is considered part of the Lord's chase. You can own a goat, maybe, but if it eats from the wrong hedgerow, that's theft. Let's go fringe again. In some towns, a pig could be put on trial. Yes, literally. If an animal caused damage or injury, it might face a mock trial and even execution. You haven't seen any pig juries today, but you keep an eye on the local livestock anyway. As the day wears on, you try to stay out of trouble. You avoid eye contact with town officials. You don't touch anything without asking. You keep your hands visible, your knife sheathed, your mouth mostly shut. But you can't help feeling that you're walking through a minefield in socks. Even the smallest misstep, stepping on the wrong person's toe, taking water from the wrong barrel, speaking out of turn, could result in punishment, fines, or exile. You hear church bells in the distance. That's your cue to head toward the chapel for the midday sermon. Mandatory attendance. Another opportunity to offend someone by sitting in the wrong pew. You walk faster now. You're learning. The Middle Ages aren't just uncomfortable. They're complicated. The rules are invisible, ever-changing, and enforced by people with questionable teeth and even more questionable tempers. And somehow, you've survived your first brush with the law. Just barely. The church doors loom ahead, tall, weather-worn, and slightly ajar, as if daring you to enter. You hesitate on the threshold, half expecting some divine force to smite you for what you're wearing, or thinking, or maybe just for being. But no lightning strikes. You're in. The chapel is dim, lit by a few smoky candles and the flicker of colored sunlight filtering through small stained glass windows. The scent inside is a mix of wax, damp stone, incense, and the faint tang of unwashed wool. It's not unpleasant, but it is heavy. The kind of air that makes you whisper instinctively, even if you don't know why. Everyone here seems to know exactly where to go, except you. You hover awkwardly at the back. A woman wearing a veil nudges you forward with the gentlest aggression. You find a seat on a rough bench. It creaks under your weight. You're already in trouble for existing. The priest appears. He's tall, gaunt, and somehow looks both exhausted and omnipotent. He doesn't smile. Of course he doesn't. Smiling is for fools and drunkards. His robes are simple, but clean, which is saying a lot around here. He steps up to the pulpit, opens a massive Bible, and begins to chant. In Latin. You don't speak Latin. Nobody around you does either. Except maybe the Reeves' nephew, who once spent 3 weeks at a monastery school before quitting because the bread was too hard. Still, everyone nods along, murmuring prayers they only half understand. You mumble too. It's safer that way. This sermon. It's not short. It's 47 minutes long and heavy on the fire and brimstone vibes. Apparently, sins this week include gossip, sleeping late, and harvesting turnips on a feast day. Also, lustful thoughts, gluttony, and dreaming about wealth. You're guilty of at least 3 of those, and it's not even noon. Let's pause for a historical interlude. The medieval church was the single most powerful institution in Europe. It dictated laws, moral behavior, daily routines, and even sleep schedules. Church bells marked time, not clocks. Holy days outnumbered working days. Baptism to burial. Every step of your life passed through a religious lens. Historians still argue whether this made life feel more meaningful or just more regulated. But one thing's clear. Even your thoughts weren't fully your own. You try to follow along. You really do. But the priest is deep into a parable about sin and goats, and your attention wavers. You start noticing details. A cobweb in the rafters. The way the floor slopes slightly toward the altar. The faint sound of someone snoring 3 pews over. You're not sure if it's the old man or the dog curled under his bench. And then you drift. Not to sleep. Not yet. But into a kind of trance. The priest's voice becomes background music, a gentle drone, like distant waves lapping at a shoreline of confusion. You almost nod off. Then he slams the Bible shut. You jerk awake. Everyone stands. You stand too, late and clumsily. People glance. You cough to hide your shame. The service ends not with applause, but with silence and a shuffling of feet. Everyone files out slowly, respectfully. You follow, blinking at the sudden sunlight outside. A boy hands the priest a basket of eggs. A woman offers cheese wrapped in a cloth. These are tithes, offerings to the church in lieu of money. You have nothing to give. You try to smile. The priest doesn't even look at you. He probably sensed your breakfast thoughts. Outside, people gather to chat, not about the sermon. No one really knows what was said, but about who looked bored, who looked too interested, and who might be secretly possessed. Spoiler, it's probably the tanner's wife. Her eye twitches. A friar approaches. His robe is patched and dusted with flour, as if he just walked out of a bakery. He smiles warmly. You relax, until he asks if you've confessed your sins this week. You laugh. He doesn't. Confession is serious business. You're supposed to do it regularly, sometimes weekly. especially before major feasts. You try to remember your sins. You lost count by breakfast. You mumble something about pride and dishonesty. He nods gravely and tells you to say 5 paternosters and avoid temptation. You thank him and back away. Let's talk fringe facts. In some areas, priests were known to give sermons so long and so monotonous that villagers paid local boys to ring bells at random intervals just to keep everyone awake. Some even employed slumber sticks, long poles used by church officials to prod sleeping congregants gently, or not so gently. You're lucky. No one poked you. Today, religion isn't just part of the culture. It is the culture. From the moment you're born to the second you die, the church shapes your actions, your hopes, your fears. Every illness could be a punishment. Every success, a reward. Every odd event, a miracle or a test. And you? You're just trying to not trip over a monk on a way out. You linger in the churchyard. The grass is patchy. Chickens peck near the headstones. Some graves are marked with crosses, others with just stones. Names are rare. Carving takes time, and literacy is even rarer. You wonder how many people rest here without being remembered. It's peaceful, in a strange way. Even the air feels quieter here. But not for long. A bell rings in the distance. The call for midday labor. Your moment of stillness is over. God might forgive your sins, but your landlord won't forgive your laziness. As you step away from the church, one final thought sticks with you. Even your dreams aren't fully your own here. If you dream something improper and confess it, you might be given penance. If you dream about wealth, you're greedy. If you dream about revenge, you're sinful. If you dream about bathing in honey with the cooper's daughter, well, let's just say, that'll cost you. You walk on shoes squelching slightly in the mud, mind swirling with Latin, incense, and a growing suspicion that you're not very good at being medieval. But don't worry, you're about to get worse at farming. The church bell has barely stopped ringing when someone grabs you by the arm and mutters something about turnips. You're not entirely sure if that's a punishment or a job assignment. Turns out, it's both. You're ushered toward a field on the edge of the village where several villagers are already bent over, hacking away at the ground like they're mad at it. This, dear listener, is your lunch break, and also your labor break. The two are one and the same, and neither involves sitting down. You're handed a wooden bowl and a splintery spoon. Someone ladles out a steaming blob of something. It's thick, beige, and gently steaming. You can identify a few chunks of root vegetable, possibly turnip, possibly parsnip, and something green that refuses to be identified. It smells faintly earthy with a top note of smoke and desperation. You're about to ask if there's bread to go with it, but the look from the man next to you makes it clear. Don't push your luck. You sit on a mossy rock, balancing your bowl in one hand and trying not to think about how many other butts have used this same rock. You take a bite. It's hot and bland and slightly gritty, as though the vegetables had a secret agreement with the soil to never fully separate. You chew slowly, painfully aware of each grain of sand grinding between your teeth. A woman across from you is chewing with such vigor, it sounds like she's breaking tiny bones in her mouth. You try to match her pace, failing spectacularly. This meal is pottage, again, the medieval default. A one-pot miracle or a one-pot curse, depending on what went into it. Today's batch seems light on meat and heavy on imagination. You spot something that could be a bean or a bug. You don't check. Let's talk lunch customs. Most peasants ate communally, often in the fields where they worked. There was no concept of a lunch hour, more like a lunch pause. You ate what you brought, what was given, or what was left over. The hierarchy was clear. The manor workers got better food, field hands like you. You're eating whatever's been scraped from the bottom of the pot. Historians still argue whether medieval food was consistently this bland, or if we're unfairly judging it through the lens of modern taste buds. What we know is that spices were expensive, and salt was hoarded like treasure. For most people, flavor was optional. You finish your bowl, barely. A dog licks it clean when you set it down. You don't stop him. Someone hands you a hoe and gestures toward the field. You stare at it like it's a museum artifact. The handle is rough, worn smooth by generations of blistered hands. You mimic what others are doing, jabbing it into the soil, turning over clumps, looking busy. Within minutes, your back twinges, your fingers ache, and your feet have disappeared into the mud. You dig. You sweat. You curse under your breath. No one notices. That's just the rhythm of life here. Occasionally, someone makes a joke about how you hold the hoe, implying you're either nobility pretending to be useful or a heretic planting weeds. You smile, laugh weakly, and pretend your muscles aren't burning. It's hot now. The midday sun beats down through a haze of humidity and manure. Flies gather. Your clothes cling. You want to wipe your brow, but your sleeve is crusty with dried pottage. You use your hand instead, leaving a streak of dirt across your forehead like a war paint of incompetence. Then you see a man walking through the field with a small horn. He blows it once. Everyone stops. He shouts, 10 minutes. Break time. You've never loved a horn so much. You stagger over to the shade of a nearby tree and collapse. Your spine cracks in at least 3 places. You're too tired to care. A young girl offers you a strip of dried apple. You take it gratefully. It's tough as bark, but tastes like sugar. A treat. You nod your thanks. She nods back and skips away, barefoot and fearless. Let's introduce a fringe fact. Some medieval communities used song rhythms to pace fieldwork. Call and response chants helped keep the tempo of digging, planting, or harvesting. You hear one now, a low humming chorus rising from the southern plot. The melody is repetitive, hypnotic, and somehow comforting. It also puts you dangerously close to falling asleep sitting up. But before you can doze, it's back to work. 10 minutes fly by faster than a tax collector at dinner time. The horn sounds again. The hoe returns to your hands. Your dreams of an afternoon nap are crushed like so many turnips beneath your calloused feet. You push through it. Dig. Haul. Repeat. Someone jokes that you're sweating like a bishop in confession. You chuckle, not because it's funny, but because if you don't laugh, you might cry. By the time the sun begins to lower, The field looks mostly the same, maybe a bit more turned. You, on the other hand, look like you've been dragged through 5 centuries of exhaustion. Your tunic is filthy. Your hose have slipped. You've got a blister on your palm the size of a walnut, but you're still standing. Barely. The villagers begin to pack up. Tools are collected. Leftover food scraps are fed to the pigs. You walk with them back toward the village, your legs stiff, your stomach already wondering what horrors dinner might bring. And as you limp along the path, you realize you just spent 3 hours breaking rocks and chasing carrots, and you're still hungry, still itchy, still utterly out of place. You think you hear someone whisper, "He won't last the week." You agree. The village is quieter now, not peaceful, just exhausted. The afternoon labor has drained the energy from every creaky bone and blistered foot. You're trailing behind a group of workers headed back into the heart of town, your legs trembling like a newborn foal. All you want is a bath, a nap, and maybe something soft to sit on. You'll get none of that. Instead, you're sent toward the workshops, specifically the carpenter's yard, because someone thinks you look like you can use a hammer. They are, unfortunately, incorrect. The workshop is a low shed, open on one side, filled with sawdust and the scent of raw timber and sweat. A man with a beard thick enough to hide small birds greets you with a grunt and hands you a wooden plank, then another, then a third. Your job, it seems, is to carry these to the rear of the shop and stack them neatly. You try, you really do, but you fumble the second plank. It slips. It lands on your foot. The bearded man laughs so hard he nearly drops his chisel. You force a smile through gritted teeth, tears welling in your eyes. The pain is sharp, immediate, and somehow eternal. Welcome to Craft Guild culture. You're not just expected to help, you're expected to not ruin things. And every trade is governed by its own unwritten rules. If you're not part of the Carpenters Guild, you're not technically allowed to make or sell anything. And if you mess up, you could be fined, or worse, ostracized. You didn't even know what the word ostracized meant until today. Now it feels very personal. You manage to stack the planks without further catastrophe, though your hands now look like a rough sketch of a topographic map, blistered, scraped, and somehow sticky. The carpenter tosses you a rag. It's unclear if it's for your hands or your tears. Next, you're asked to sand a beam. The tool is a block of stone wrapped in cloth. You rub it along the surface of the wood, back and forth, as splinters embed themselves in your palm like tiny, disapproving arrows. You keep going, trying to ignore the fact that every other worker seems to be twice as fast and half as miserable. Someone jokes that you sand like a nobleman. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a slur. Either way, you laugh. You need the friends, or at least fewer enemies. Then, inevitably, something breaks. You were supposed to pass a mallet to the apprentice. Instead, you dropped it. It landed on a dowel joint and snapped it in half. A collective groan rises from the workers. The bearded man sighs so loudly it echoes off the rafters. You freeze. Are they going to yell? Hit you? Fire you? No. They hand you a broom. This is your role now. sweeping sawdust and staying out of the way. Honestly, it's a relief. As you sweep, you learn a few things. 1. Medieval tools are heavy and often handmade. 2. Apprenticeships lasted years and required an oath, money, or bloodline. 3. Nobody expects you to be good at anything today, but they do expect you not to make things worse. You glance at the tools around you: axes, adzes, augers, each with a very specific purpose. None of them are labeled. Everyone just knows. You, meanwhile, are trying not to get impaled on a stack of half-finished stools. Let's take a historical moment. Medieval guilds were strict, hierarchical, and protective. Masters trained apprentices, who became journeymen, who, after years of work and an approved masterpiece, might be accepted as masters themselves. It was both a trade system and a social club. Historians still argue whether it was a fair meritocracy or a walled garden of nepotism. Either way, you're not getting in. You overhear 2 journeymen grumbling about taxes on imported wood. One blames the king, the other blames the French. A third blames the baker, for reasons unknown. You keep sweeping. Eventually, the sun starts to dip. Golden light slants through the beams. The carpenter tells you, without looking up, "That's enough for today." It sounds generous. You nod, bow slightly, and back out of the workshop like you're leaving royalty. You stagger into the lane, back stiff, hands raw, pride non-existent. Let's recap. You failed to carry planks. You broke a tool. You ruined a joint. And you got promoted to janitor. You are not thriving, but you are learning. At the edge of the village, you find a bench. Not a fancy one, just a plank on 2 stones. You sit and groan and possibly whimper a little. A girl walks by holding a bundle of rushes, floor covering for the local tavern. You smile at her. She smiles back. Maybe not everyone hates you. A passing dog stops, sniffs your foot, and sneezes. You try not to take it personally. Then, from behind you, the familiar sound of someone tripping, followed by a shouted curse in Old English. You turn. It's the same apprentice who laughed at you earlier. He's fallen into a barrel of nails. You help him out. You're both bleeding by the end of it. He grunts something that might be thanks. Progress. Your clothes are stiff with dust and sweat. Your back feels like it's aging in real time, but you're surviving the workshop. 1 splintered hour at a time. You stretch, you wince, you stand. Time for supper. If you're lucky, the stew will only taste mildly suspicious tonight. If you're not, well, there's always the tavern cat to distract you. You limp toward the tavern, fantasizing about supper like it's going to be a lavish affair. Your stomach growls a hopeful hymn. You're picturing a hearty stew. Maybe some fresh bread, perhaps a slab of meat that doesn't immediately make you suspicious. You are, unfortunately, mistaken. You step into the tavern, low ceilings, wooden beams, smoke curling from a central hearth. It's warm, yes, but also thick with body odor, stale ale, and what you now recognize as the unmistakable scent of boiled cabbage. You swallow down your hope. A woman with powerful forearms slaps a bowl of something wet and vaguely brown onto the table. "Supper," she says. You peer inside. It's stew. Technically. A thin broth with floating bits of turnip. Leeks. Maybe a sliver of onion. And, wait, was that a feather? You prod it with your spoon. It disappears below the surface like a guilty secret. There is bread, too, a heel of yesterday's loaf, tough and peppered with mystery specks. It takes effort to tear. You manage to rip off a chunk and dip it into the stew. It softens. Slightly. Someone next to you belches loud enough to shake the rafters. You glance around. The tavern is packed. Villagers of all types are here, crammed onto benches, elbows bumping. Most are eating. Some are drinking. One man is playing a lute badly. Another is picking his teeth with what might be a chicken bone or a small tool. Either way, it's working. You take another bite of stew. It's hot, salty, and vaguely meat adjacent. You don't ask what kind. You don't want to ask what kind. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers regularly ate rats during lean times, or if that was propaganda. You decide not to find out personally. Across the room, someone sneezes into their ale. Their neighbor drinks it anyway. You sigh. Welcome to communal dining, medieval style. Meals like this were often served at long shared tables. There's no concept of personal space, no napkins, and no "I'm vegan." You eat what's served, when it's served, and you eat all of it. Complaining gets you scorn. Wasting gets you punched. Still, there's something oddly comforting about the clatter of spoons, the warmth of the fire, the rhythmic creaking of wooden mugs meeting wooden tables. You're hungry enough that even this oily stew starts to feel like a blessing. Then the man beside you starts telling a story. It's about a donkey, a miller's daughter, and a haunted sack of barley. You can't follow the plot, but you laugh when everyone else does. It's safer that way. Plus, the storyteller has wild eyes and a dagger strapped to his leg. As the bowls are cleared, the tavern keeper's wife announces that anyone with an injury may approach the back room for treatment. You perk up. You've got blisters, bruises, and a mystery ache behind your knee. Maybe help is finally at hand. You step into the back room, and you instantly regret it. It's dim, smoky. A single tallow candle flickers beside a small table covered in jars. Rags, and what you think is a pair of forceps made from repurposed tongs. A man greets you with a nod. What ails you? You start to explain. He cuts you off, pokes your palm, tuts, and says, "You need leeches." You blink. He's already reaching into a jar. Let's pause for historical context. In the Middle Ages, medicine was a blend of inherited wisdom, random guesses, and a firm belief in balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness was seen as an imbalance in these fluids. And one of the most popular remedies, bloodletting. Enter the leech. You back away slightly. He assures you it won't hurt. You assure him it won't happen. He shrugs and offers a paste instead. It smells like garlic and clay. You smear it on your hand. It burns slightly. You pretend it doesn't. Another patient behind you is groaning while someone resets a dislocated shoulder using a combination of yelling, ale, and brute force. You decide you've had enough medicine for one night. You re-emerge into the tavern, now livelier than before. Someone is dancing. Someone else is definitely drunk. A third person is asleep on the hearthstone, drooling peacefully. You find your spot on the bench again. The stew bowl is gone. So is the bread. Your stomach, however, is slightly calmer. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe it was the paste. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Let's slip in a quirky fact. Some medieval remedies included powdered unicorn horn, usually narwhal tusk, crushed emeralds, bad idea, and wine-soaked bandages infused with prayers. One cure for sore throats involved hanging a toad around your neck in a bag. Historians still argue whether it was symbolic healing or just really awkward fashion. You stretch, your back cracks. No one looks up. The tavern is winding down. People are yawning. The fire is dimming. You consider asking for a bed. The tavern keeper laughs. No room. You can take the loft or the stable. You nod slowly. The loft it is. You're handed a scratchy wool blanket and pointed toward a ladder. You climb. Every rung creaks. The loft is small, crowded, and filled with sleeping bodies. Someone's already snoring. You step over a sack of grain, bump into a bucket, and find a corner that doesn't smell too strongly of feet. You curl up. Your hand throbs. Your knees ache. But you've eaten. You're horizontal. And miraculously, you're still alive. One day down, 14 hours to go. You awaken to the sound of whispering, not the gentle, dreamy kind. More the frantic, panicked sort, like someone just realized their chickens are missing. You crack open one eye, still dark. You'd only just drifted off in your corner of the loft, curled like a sack of potatoes in your scratchy wool cocoon. But now, someone's already descending the ladder in a half sprint. There's muttering about guild inspections. Guild inspections? You sit up, bones protesting, and peer out into the tavern below. A few candles remain lit. The tavern keeper is talking to a stern-looking man with a wide-brimmed hat, a heavy pouch, and a very official-looking scroll. You know trouble when you see it. Someone upstairs says, "Hide the stool." You blink. Hide the stool? Welcome to the convoluted world of medieval guilds, unions, monopolies, gatekeepers, and social clubs all rolled into one. Every trade is regulated. Carpenters, masons, tanners, weavers, even bakers. You can't just make things. That's amateur hour. No. If you produce anything without being in the guild or under a master, you're breaking the law. And guess what? Remember that broken dowel joint you ruined in the carpenter's shop earlier? Yeah, someone used it anyway. They patched it. They made a stool. And now it's in this tavern. And now you're here. You're technically part of a black market furniture ring. Congratulations. You stumble down the ladder and try to look innocent. The guild inspector is pacing. He asks questions like, who carved this leg? And was this varnish approved by the warden of woodcrafts? The tavern keeper shrugs a lot. The stool vanishes mysteriously under a bench. No one breathes. Eventually, the inspector nods. He pulls out a stub of chalk, writes something on the tavern door frame, and leaves. You exhale for what feels like the first time in 5 minutes. A woman nearby mutters, "That was close," then hands you a piece of bread. It's hard as a rock. You chew anyway. Let's pause for context. Guilds weren't just about craft. They were about power. They set prices, enforced quality standards, and decided who got to work and who didn't. Becoming a guild member meant years of training, passing exams, and submitting a masterpiece. Guilds protected their own and crushed outsiders. Historians still argue whether guilds preserved skill or just stifled competition. What's clear is that they took themselves very seriously. Accidental stool-making? That could get you fined, exiled, or, worst of all, forced into mandatory apprenticeship. And trust me, you don't want that. It's 7 years of sweeping floors and praying someone drops dead so you can inherit their tools. You finish your bread just as the tavern keeper waves you over. "I need help in the cellar," he says. You hesitate. "Just moving barrels," he adds. You nod and follow. The tavern's cellar is cool and damp, filled with casks, crates, and the smell of yeast, damp moss, and something you hope is old cabbage. He hands you one end of a barrel. You lift. It's heavier than your regrets. You lug it into place, your arms shaking, and almost trip on a loose cobblestone. You catch yourself, barely. He grunts approval. You're stronger than you look. You take that as a compliment. Kind of. Then he points to a crate of mugs. "Restock the shelves." You do. Carefully. One slips. You catch it. Victory. As you stack, a rat scurries past your boot. You freeze. The tavern keeper shrugs. "Good luck, rat," he says. "Once your tasks are done." He nods toward a narrow bench near the fire. "You can sleep there tonight. Guilds only check lofts." You mumble thanks, curl up on the bench, and pull your blanket tight. It smells like smoke and ale. It's the best thing that's happened to you today. Before you drift off again, you think about the guilds, about how even basic tasks require permission, about how everyone's watching, always, about how that stool, your clumsy, innocent mistake, could have cost the tavern keeper a week's income. You sigh. You're learning. Slowly, painfully, one splintered lesson at a time. And you're surviving. Barely. It's morning again. You know this not because anyone gently wakes you with warm tea and gentle harp music, but because someone drops a tankard directly onto the floor beside your bench. You jolt awake, heart hammering, hair stuck to your face, mouth tasting like something that once dreamed of being bread. Around you, the tavern is already buzzing. The fire's been rekindled, someone's sweeping the hearth, and a very determined man is trying to remove an uncooperative splinter from his thumb using his teeth. The tavern keeper nods at you. "Help with tables. Supper rush is coming later." You blink. Supper? Already? But before you can wonder how the day evaporated, you're handed a rag and pointed toward a sticky table that smells faintly of fish oil and despair. You get to work. Supper prep in a medieval tavern isn't just cooking. It's foraging, bargaining, improvising, and praying nothing spoils in the meantime. And tonight's menu? Well, let's just say it won't impress any food critics. Someone brings in a basket of wilted greens. Another drops off a sack of barley with a hole chewed through the bottom. Possibly rats, possibly very determined weasels. You're handed an onion and asked to peel it. It's sprouting. You peel it anyway. You help slice roots. They're knobbly, dry. and covered in mysterious pockmarks. A nearby cook mutters, "We'll boil it till it begs for mercy." You nod solemnly. Soon, the pot over the hearth starts to bubble. You peek inside. It's a medley of barley, greens, wild garlic, and some kind of meat. You don't ask what kind. It's better that way. Let's pause for your daily quirky fact. In medieval cookery, recipes were vague at best. Measurements were a goodly handful, or as much as a goose might weigh. Seasoning? Whatever was cheapest or most suspicious. Stews were reheated across multiple days, lovingly referred to as perpetual stew. Some pots, in fact, reportedly stayed in use for years. Historians still argue whether this preserved flavor or just fermented regret. You help stir. The ladle is a carved gourd. The handle is too short. You splash hot stew onto your sleeve. It burns. No one notices. As evening falls, villagers begin to trickle in. The tavern fills quickly. Again, it always does. Food is scarce, but company is plentiful. People need warmth, stories, distractions from blisters and hunger and missing chickens. You start carrying bowls to tables. Carefully, you do well, until you don't. You trip. It's not dramatic, just a toe catching on a loose plank. But the bowl, containing piping hot barley stew with floating meat cubes, launches from your hand and lands squarely in the lap of the town crier. The town crier. He is not pleased. There is shouting. Everyone looks. You stammer an apology. He blinks, then bellows, "Steward has poured soup on me!" At full cry volume, as if delivering royal news. For a moment, the room is silent. Then, a slow ripple of laughter. Even the stew-splattered crier chuckles. "You're lucky I wasn't wearing the good breeches," he says, wiping his tunic with a dignity rarely seen in someone soaked in soup. You clean up. You survive. The tavern keeper smirks. "You're not the worst we've had." High praise. Finally, your own bowl arrives. You sit. The stew is hot, oversalted, and wonderful. A slice of dark bread, slightly less hard than yesterday, accompanies it. You chew slowly, savoring the warmth more than the flavor. Beside you, two old men debate whether the winter will come early. One predicts frost by October. The other claims he can smell snow weeks in advance. A woman chimes in that her knees know before the moon does. A boy offers to bet a chicken on it. You sip your broth. The meat is chewy. You don't ask. Across the room, someone begins to sing. A lilting folk tune about a knight who fell in love with a fishmonger's daughter, only to discover she was, in fact, a heron. It's oddly romantic and somehow tragic. You hum along quietly. Let's drop a fringe tidbit in here. Medieval folk songs were often layered with metaphors, innuendo, and cautionary tales. They taught lessons like, "Don't trust fair maidens with webbed feet," or "Turnips can't solve heartbreak, but they help." You're exhausted, but you're also full. For now, the tavern begins to quiet as villagers drift home. You help with the last few mugs, stack the spoons, and sweep the rushes. Then the tavern keeper calls out, "Ladder's full tonight. You're in the stable." You nod. You don't even protest. Outside, the air is crisp. The stars are out, faint behind a veil of wood smoke and fog. You make your way to the stable, guided by the soft sounds of horses shifting and snorting in their stalls. A patch of hay in the corner becomes your bed. You lie down. It smells of dust, horse, and something faintly herbal, maybe leftover hay flowers. You pull your blanket around you and settle in, body sore but somehow peaceful. Tomorrow might bring more soup in someone's lap, more splinters, more guild inspectors. But tonight, the hay is soft, your belly is full, and the stable cat curls beside you, purring like a lullaby. You're still here, still surviving. You wake before dawn, again, not because you're well rested, but because someone's loudly arguing with a rooster. Yes, a rooster. Apparently, it crowed at the wrong hour, and now an old man is yelling at it for spreading false time. You bury your face in the straw. The cat that slept near you is gone. The warmth it left behind is not. You stretch. Your spine crackles like firewood. Your clothes are stiff with yesterday's sweat and the light perfume of horse breath. You brush bits of hay from your face and rise slowly, joints protesting, stomach grumbling. You slept in a stable and still somehow feel like you've been hit by a cart. And now you need to relieve yourself. Welcome to medieval sanitation, the part of your journey you've been quietly dreading. You shuffle behind the stable and spot what you think is the designated spot. A rough wooden shack with a half door, leaning slightly to one side, like it's ashamed of its own existence. A man exits, wiping his hands on a tuft of grass. He nods at you like you're about to fight a dragon. You open the door. Inside, the smell hits you first. A swirling miasma of ammonia, rot, and something you refuse to identify. It's dark. A single thin beam of light sneaks in through a crack in the wall. You approach the hole in the wooden seat. You peer down. Bad idea. It's a pit. A deep, bottomless, nightmarish pit of things that once were food, thoughts, and dignity. The buzzing is immediate and aggressive. Flies rise like a cloud. You hesitate. For too long. A rat skitters beneath the boards. You flinch, heart skipping. The rat doesn't care. It's seen worse. You do your business. Quickly. Uncomfortably. You don't sit. You hover. Balancing like a trapeze artist over the abyss. Trying not to breathe through your nose. You've never been more focused in your life. When you finish, there is no toilet paper. There is straw. Or moss. Or a smooth-ish stone. You choose moss. Outside again. The air feels clean enough to baptize you. You inhale deeply and make a mental note to never, ever complain about modern plumbing again. Let's talk medieval toilets, shall we? They came in various horrific forms. Open pits, like the one you just visited. Chamber pots, which were emptied out windows. Watch your step. And castle garderobes. Basically high-tech medieval thrones that dropped waste directly down the side of the wall. If you were wealthy, you had your own little stone closet. If you were poor, you had bushes. Historians still debate whether some castle moats were used as sewage systems or just happened to smell like them. Back at the tavern, people are waking up. Bread is being sliced. Weak ale is being poured. You're handed a crust and a mug and given a task. Empty the night jars. You freeze. Yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. You're given a wooden yoke and 2 sloshing pots, full of last night's leftovers. Your job is to carry them to the edge of the village, where the waste pile steams quietly in the morning chill. It's both a civic duty and a hazing ritual. You do it. Slowly, carefully, arms trembling. The stench follows you like a cursed cloak. A dog barks at you. A child laughs. You nearly trip. You do not spill. You are victorious. You dump the contents onto the heap and walk away without looking back. Like an action hero. A very smelly, sleep-deprived, medieval action hero. You wash your hands in the river with ash soap. Your fingers sting. Your soul does, too. Let's slip in a fringe tidbit here. Some medieval homes, especially in cities, had shared latrines that were cleaned by gong farmers. It was an actual job. They cleaned cesspits at night and were paid well, because no one else would do it. Gong farmers were both vital and deeply avoided. You may now appreciate your career choices more than ever. You return to the tavern. A woman hands you a cleanish rag and tells you to sweep the common room. You do. Quietly, trying not to gag every time someone opens a chamber pot upstairs. By now, you've accepted it. Cleanliness isn't about being clean. It's about being less filthy than the day before. You find a moment of stillness near the fire. You warm your hands, you sip ale that tastes like lukewarm regret, and then you sneeze, loudly, wetly, dramatically. Everyone turns. The tavern keeper eyes you. Cold? He asks. You shrug. Maybe. He narrows his eyes. Better not be plague. Your heart skips. No one laughs. Let's take a breath. Not just you. Everyone feared illness. Every sneeze, cough, or rash was suspect. And when symptoms showed, people reacted with speed and superstition. Plague wasn't theoretical. It had visited many times before. And it would again. You're handed a dried sprig of lavender and told to sniff it. Keeps the bad air away, the woman says. You obey. You sit in the corner, sniffling quietly, lavender under your nose, wrapped in a blanket that smells like 3 other people and a goat. Outside, the morning brightens. Inside, you sip, scratch, sneeze, and think quietly to yourself. You've used a toilet pit. You've emptied a waste jar. You've survived the unspoken war of sanitation. And now, with your nose full of lavender and your eyes full of regret, you're still going. You're practically medieval now. The afternoon has slipped quietly into evening. You didn't notice, too busy shuffling around the village, trying not to cough in anyone's direction. Your lavender sprig has wilted. Your shoes are damp again. Your head is heavy. And now, as the sun fades behind the crooked rooftops, night comes creeping, not just with darkness, but with the particular brand of unease that only medieval nights can bring. There are no street lamps, no neon glow, no distant hum of cars. The sky grows black, and the village sinks into shadow like a slow submersion. Torches are lit, flickering orbs of orange nailed to doorposts, carried by hands, or left sputtering in iron brackets. Their light is faint and patchy, like someone trying to paint with candle smoke. The wind rises. You wrap your blanket tighter around your shoulders. You're not sure where to go. The stable is full. The tavern is louder than usual. Some kind of dice game has taken over half the floor, and someone's already fallen asleep in the grain sack pile. You don't want to go back to the loft. The snoring alone could flatten a mule. So, you find a nook near the church wall. It's cold, but it's quiet, and it smells faintly of limestone and moss, which, frankly, is an upgrade. You sit, and then you hear it. A low, distant howl. Not theatrical, not dramatic, just steady, real. Wolves. You pause. Are there wolves? Yes, there are wolves, and bandits, and ghosts, depending on who you ask. Some villagers claim the old forest path is haunted by a milkmaid who died of heartbreak. Others say it's haunted by someone's grandmother who just didn't like her grandkids. Either way, people avoid it after sundown. Night in a medieval village is not romantic. It's survival mode. Doors are bolted. Windows are shuttered. Chickens are herded indoors like small, angry gods, and people sleep close. Family, friends, livestock. Heat matters more than privacy. You, meanwhile, are sitting on a damp stone with a threadbare blanket and a crumpled piece of bread you found in your pocket. You eat it. Of course you do. Then you lie down. The ground is uneven. There's a root stabbing your lower back. Your arm falls asleep before you do. The wind whistles. A cat knocks over a bucket somewhere. A man coughs from 2 houses away. You try to close your eyes. You try to sleep. But medieval nights are loud. There are the wolves, still howling, still distant, still unsettling. There are monks at the nearby priory, chanting in Latin at intervals throughout the night. Complain, matins, prime. The divine office never rests, and neither, apparently, do they. There are dogs barking, a baby crying, someone retching, and then, because why not, a donkey brays so loudly you nearly roll off your patch of earth. You glare at it in the dark. It brays again, possibly in defiance. You pull your blanket over your head and try to drift away. Let's talk about nighttime fears. In the medieval world, danger came not just from what you could see, but from what you couldn't. Evil spirits, demons, fairies that stole your breath. A mole on the wrong part of your body could mean witchcraft. Sleep paralysis, that was a devil sitting on your chest. Most people had some kind of amulet or charm tucked under their pillow. You clutch your chicken bone good luck token. It's either magical or deeply unhygienic. Possibly both. Somewhere in the dark, you hear murmured prayer. Someone nearby is whispering to the Virgin Mary, or Saint Anthony, or both. It sounds comforting, even if you can't understand the words. And then, quiet. Not true silence, just the soft hush of a village that's finally settling. You roll onto your side. The root in your back now presses against your ribs. Progress. Your thoughts drift. You think about the field, the tavern, the stew, the stool you accidentally helped build, the latrine pit, the ghost milkmaid, the wolves. And yet, despite all of it, you're still here, still breathing, still sore, still you. Let's close this one with a curious fact. Some medieval people believed dreams held messages, warnings, gifts from saints or glimpses into the future. A bad dream could mean sickness. A good one could mean love or rain. Depending on your mood and how many turnips you ate, you hope tonight brings you something good, even if it's just the dreamless, empty kind of sleep where your body gives up before your thoughts do. You close your eyes. Finally, the wind quiets. The wolves stop. The world slips away. You wake up before the sun. Not because you meant to, because something cold and wet nudged your face. You blink blearily, And there it is, a cow's nose, moist, curious, and very close. The cow blinks back, as if to say, "You're in my spot." You sit up slowly. Everything hurts. Your knees creak. Your blanket is damp. Your stomach whines. But the cow wanders off, satisfied, and you're left with the knowledge that you've officially survived the night. Barely. The village is still quiet. A rooster calls. Not early this time, but right on cue. You hear shutters creaking open, buckets being set down, and the first soft crunch of boots on frosty grass. The air is sharp, almost clean, like the world is trying to apologize for how it treated you yesterday. You stand. Your body argues. You win. Sort of. Your clothes are stiff. Your feet are sore. And your face feels like it aged a decade overnight. But you walk anyway, past the chapel, past the well, nodding silently to other early risers. People carrying firewood, baskets, hope. Someone greets you with a nod. Another offers a crust of bread. It's tough, but warm. You chew. You're starting to enjoy things that don't actively offend your senses. At the edge of the village, smoke rises from the bakery chimney. You pause. The scent is actually wonderful. Flour, yeast, that thin, dreamy line between hunger and satisfaction. The baker, covered in white dust and a deep frown, waves you in. You help move wood to the oven. It's hot, blisteringly so. You sweat. You breathe flour. You watch loaves puff and darken, pulled from the fire with long paddles. One cracks as it cools. The sound is oddly soothing. And for your trouble, you're given a fresh roll. Soft, steamy, actual flavor. You nearly cry. Let's reflect a moment. You've made it through. The clothes, the food, the field, the law, the sermon, the stew, the guild, the rats, the pit, the wolves, and now here you are, holding warm bread, breathing clean air, not bleeding. You've adjusted to the rhythms, slow, aching, deliberate. People rise with the sun and rest with the stars. Every task feels ancient. Every conversation sounds like a whispered survival story. Everything is earned. Everything hurts. And yet, you've made it. A child runs past you chasing a dog. The dog chases a chicken. The chicken chases nothing, just screams. Life goes on. The reeve passes and doesn't scowl at you. That's a win. A woman from the tavern nods. That's a miracle. You carry your bread down the path, wondering what would have happened if you'd stayed another day, another week. Would you find a place? A rhythm? Would your back ever stop hurting? Historians still argue whether medieval villagers were miserable, stoic, or just too tired to care. But one thing's certain, they endured. And so did you. Almost 24 hours of filth, fear, stew, and surprise inspections later. And you're still here, covered in flour, clutching bread like treasure, with memories you didn't want but now can't forget. It's time to rest again. Not the hard hay in your ear kind, the real kind, the modern kind. Your bed, your sheets, your water that doesn't need boiling first. Close your eyes, traveler. You've earned it. You won't last 24 hours in medieval times. You just did. Barely. Let your shoulders drop. Feel how heavy your limbs are now. You don't need to carry anything else tonight. No tools, no bowls, no awkward medieval expectations. just quiet, just stillness. Breathe in and let it out slowly, like the last puff of chimney smoke from the baker's oven. Let your breath settle like dust in a sunbeam. You've wandered far, through mud and straw and candlelit silence, and you're home again now. The noises are gone. No more wolves, no more sermons, no dripping chamber pots above your head, just the sound of your breath, calm and steady, like a stream in spring, soft, untroubled, familiar. You're warm now, not from a hearth or hay pile, but from safety, from softness, from the comfort of knowing you made it, and everything you felt. The ache, the grit, the laughter, the strange stew, the stars, the fear, was just a story, a long, strange, itchy dream. The kind you wake up from and smile about later, the kind you carry, gently, into sleep. Let your thoughts drift like wisps of wool caught in the breeze. Nothing left to worry about, nothing left to do. Just this moment, just this breath. You can rest. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. Sleep well. Welcome to Neo Ease, a channel where history slows down, softens its edges, and becomes something you can drift to sleep with. No shouting, no battle reenactments, just one voice, one story, and a little corner of time waiting for you to listen. Here, we don't just talk about the past, we walk you through it, step by slow, sleepy step. We believe history isn't just for textbooks or trivia nights. It's for winding down. It's for soothing late-night minds and helping you forget about emails, errands, and modern noise. Because somewhere in the quiet details, in the candle-lit kitchens and creaky wooden floors, in the muddy roads and mossy chapels, there's something oddly peaceful about the way life used to be. At Neo Ease, we take you into the small moments of forgotten centuries, not the loud ones, the quiet ones, like the soft rhythm of a village bell at dawn, or the scratch of a monk's quill as he copies a page by firelight, or the sound of a baker's hands kneading dough while someone sings an old song in the background. A song nobody remembers now, but someone once hummed every morning. You'll wander through a medieval tavern where soup is suspicious. Socks don't exist, and the town crier yells about chicken theft at sunrise. You'll sit on a wobbly stool and listen to a priest drone on in Latin while someone in the back definitely falls asleep. You'll try and fail to farm turnips. You'll drop things. You'll sneeze in front of a guild official and get accused of witchcraft. And through it all, you'll be gently, quietly told that yes, you're doing just fine. Each episode is a story dressed as history. Or maybe the other way around. We don't just list facts. We live them, slowly, in second person. So you can feel what it's like to be hungry in a wooden house where the wind whistles through the roof. Or to wear a cloak that doesn't quite fit. Or to fall asleep beside a snoring stranger in a stable, listening to the distant hum of wolves and prayers. And don't worry, you're not here to learn. You're here to relax. If something sticks with you, great. If you fall asleep before the first 5 minutes are over, even better. That means we've done our job. So if you've ever wished your history class had more moss, more soup, more sarcasm, and fewer tests, if you love the idea of being gently carried through time with a voice that never hurries, then Neo-Ease is your new nighttime ritual. Subscribe, turn down the lights, take a deep breath, and let your brain soften like old bread in a bowl of broth. History has never been so easy to fall asleep to. Welcome to Neo-Ease. We'll take it from here.